Yes, he was. Yeah. You're right, it's like number 4, I think, so a couple things in here.
Folks, it's after 4 o'clock, so I'd like to go ahead and convene the City Council Regular Legal Committee for Thursday, July 23rd. If we could, well, I don't know that we need the roll, but I understand Councilor Perry is going to be joining us. Is he on yet?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's like a voice of God in this room. It comes from the ceiling. You're really loud and clear.
I am here.
Yeah, great. So we appreciate that. What's that? I know, I should never said that. Anyway, so we'll call the meeting to order, and if the minutes will reflect that the 4 council members are present, as is the staff liaison, and Councilor Perry is here, obviously, via GoToMeeting. So now, if we could have an approval of the minutes from the June 25th City Council, or, where am I? Legal Committee meeting, I would appreciate it.
Counselor, do we need to approve the agenda first?
Yes.
Sorry.
Madam
will-
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve today's agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda for today's meeting. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Counselor?
Aye.
We were going
Aye.
to remove item 4.
Oh,
All right, I'm sorry, I need to settle down. My fault. My fault. Overs. I'm so sorry. Our city attorney, Parker Patterson, had asked us if we could remove item number 4 from the agenda, which is the proposed ordinance amending convention center fees, so it can go back for more of his review. So I'm so sorry. Could we
All right,
include that in the motion?
yes, but I'm wondering, did we actually get a vote? So do we need to go back and,
Just exit out. We didn't,
let's start all over again.
I don't think we didn't have a vote.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda, removing item 4, ordinance 20XX, amending convention center fees ordinances, and
Second.
sending it back.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion to accept the agenda other than item number 4, which will go back for legal review. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Now, the approval of the minutes from the June 25th meeting, which are attached in our agenda.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for the legal committee meeting on June 25th, 2020.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented for June 25th. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. We'll get into our regular items. Our first one is a new agreement, I believe, with the Roswell Air Center. Go ahead, Scott.
Madam Chair, Councilors, good afternoon. This is a new lease agreement with Custom Graphics and More. They're a graphics shop that's going into Building 733, which was previously occupied by Kavu, right next to the 3 buildings, one between General Airframe Support and the Old Dog Brotherhood, those 3 right there near the gate. They would be occupying 2,962 square feet for a rent amount of $325 a month, or $3,900 annually, and it would be a 1-year lease.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments for staff? Okay, hearing none, this would probably go on the consent agenda for the August council meeting. May I have a motion, please? Page 15.
15.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we send to, send to the consent agenda of the City Council for recommending approval to authorize Custom Graphics and More in a New Mexico corporation, a new lease agreement on building number 733, consisting of 2,962 square feet, and the rent amount of $325 monthly or $3,900 annually, with all other terms and conditions of the lease.
Thank you.
Second.
Do I have a motion and a second to recommend this new lease to full city council on the consent agenda? Any further discussion, questions? Hearing none, then all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? None? So this will go on the consent agenda for August. I appreciate it. Scott, let me ask you, there's the handout I think that we got last month from General Airframe Support in the front of our packet. Is that just for information?
Is that what?
That was attached to the minutes, because that was what was handed out last time. and
Oh,
It
okay.
was attached to the
Sorry,
minutes
it
as
did
an
say.
exhibit.
That was for their land lease last month.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Next is also from the airport, Mr. Stark. We have the approval of the recommendation on the RFP 20007 for engineering services.
Yes, we do. This RFP 20-007 was for engineering services, basically our on-call engineering for the airport. We opened bids on June 23rd. We had one proposal from Armstrong Consultants. We ran that through the committee to score it. It scored very high. Being only one proposal that we had, we did not feel that it was necessary to do interviews and recommend awarding this contract to Armstrong Consultants.
Okay. Any questions of Scott? They've been with us now for how long, Scott?
About 12 years.
Oh, really? That long? Okay. And this agreement is a 1 year,
It's a one-year agreement with 3 one-year options.
3 1-year options. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Can I get a motion on this too, please?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to consider recommending approval of award of RFP 20007 for engineering services at the Roswell Air Center to be placed on the next City Council's consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation and adopt Armstrong Construction in answer to RFP 20007 to be on the consent agenda. Any further questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Next, we have ordinance 20-09, which is revising solid waste. I had asked that this be put on the agenda just because we did approve it to advertise it at the last council meeting, but it had not gone through a committee. So, Mr. Patterson.
Yeah, as the committee will remember, it was on the legal agenda for last month, but we weren't able to complete the agenda. And so it was put on the council agenda by the mayor or at his request. And so now we want to bring it back just to give anybody a chance to recommend any changes or anything that they think needs to be added or taken away, or any thoughts that anyone would have on that. And if everybody's happy with it, to get a recommendation to approve it out of the legal committee.
Thank you. We did see it at council. Yes, Councilor Foster.
On section 3, page 29, I think, Parker, you and I have already discussed this at the last city council meeting. Because right now, it's if anybody paying the water bill is responsible for the solid waste, correct?
I think as you were pointing out there may be some conflicting provisions in our existing ordinance as
Right.
to who exactly is responsible. Under fees, it says every person owning or controlling real property within the city shall pay the solid waste collection and disposal fees. That's 21-20. A, but at B, it says, any person whose name the water meter for the premises is registered of record. And so those don't necessarily jive with each other. You may or may not be the owner just because your name is on the
If you're
water
renting,
meter.
yeah.
So that was a catch by Counselor Foster that I had noticed. It's in our existing code, and so the option is to change it either way. I don't have a preference myself.
Well, I think for renting purposes, it probably should still stay with the water meter. Because otherwise, what we're saying here is, if you're renting a building, you can come back and say, I don't owe for the sanitation. You got to pay the person whose name's on the title.
Well, and I think if you look at section 20-21, it's every person owning or controlling real property. And so arguably, I think you could construe that to mean renters as well. You're controlling the property if you have the rental agreement. So it may be that 21-20 A and B are not necessarily in
Conflicting.
conflict.
I just,
Okay.
yeah.
So the question is, yes, like you say, they may or may not be interpreted as being in conflict. So Counselor Foster, do you have a preference?
Well, I like ordinances to be as clean as possible. I do understand, though, that, what is our present policy if, say, a renter moves out?
Well, and that's a good question, because if they disconnect the water service when they move out, there may be nobody on the meter if the owner doesn't then connect the water. And I don't know what the process is for that. I'm not sure.
And so that leads to that, catch-22. We don't want to get to a point where we don't have it specific who is responsible for paying the bill.
Yes. I think that's a very good point. What I could suggest is that I could get back with the guys over there at Solid Waste, sort out exactly what the procedure is, and have a recommended fix for the council at the hearing, if that would be okay.
That would be good for me. Because basically the rest of it I'm okay with. We're pulling the fees from it so that we don't have to change the ordinance every time we have to change fees.
Correct.
That makes sense. All the rest of this stuff seemed logical, but when I saw that the two different parties were due, or had to pay, I knew that could create a loophole that we don't want to end up having to fight in court.
I can appreciate that. If you'll let me get with the solid waste guys, I'm sure we can figure out a little tweak there, and it'll just be a couple words, and we can just introduce that at the public hearing, if that's okay.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So I don't know that we actually need a motion
We're already because it's
to tweak
already,
it, because
we're already going to have a public hearing on it, aren't we?
Yes, we've already
advertised,
approved
and
it.
yeah, so,
but, like I say, it doesn't have a committee recommendation, so. I think we're kind of authorizing to look into maybe making them with the same intent in mind.
Perhaps you could make a motion to recommend adoption subject to that amendment that we discussed.
Yeah.
the fixing of the conflicting,
Provisions in section
Fees.
20 section
Yeah.
21-20 A and B.
You want to do that?
sure.
Yay.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to send, to make a recommendation of approval for the changes in our proposed ordinance for the solid waste, it's Chapter 21, pending now I've got to think of it, the fixing of the conflicting conflicting ownership or responsibility of fees in 2120 A and B.
Second.
Good. We have a motion and a second. So Counselor Foster, thank you for seeing that. And so the motion is to make a recommendation to full council at the public hearing to adopt, the ordinance with this change in language. Okay, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, no. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, guys. Next, we have the Thompson Consulting LLC agreement that we approved at full council last month. This month. Sorry, this month. Mr. Joe Thompson is here with us, and I'd say welcome to Roswell, and if you would please give us a little background information.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Councilors. My name is Joe Thompson, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to be with you this evening, and I'm really appreciate the opportunity to get to work with you. I've spent the past 25 years in Santa Fe. I began working for Governor Johnson as his legislative person, and then I was in the legislature for a few years in leadership, and then for the past 16 years I've been a lobbyist. And I've represented about, 15 municipalities over the years. And the one thing that I've learned in my service as a lobbyist for municipal government is that I do not improvise. I work for you, and I am there to help you make informed choices on how you want to proceed on matters of policy. And I really appreciate the way that my agreement has been set up so that I'm coordinating everything I do through the city manager. I think that will really be helpful. And as we've learned in the past few years, particularly as it relates to capital outlay, things are happening so quickly now that it can be really beneficial to have someone on the ground. If you all have questions that you need answered quickly, or you need me to run something down, that's my purpose, is to help you make informed choices. So. And I'll stand for any questions that you or the counselors have.
Okay. We appreciate you being here. Does anyone have questions of Mr. Thompson?
I want to just thank you for being here, and also just thank you for representing us and being willing to represent us. I know it's not always an easy task, and it's a lot easier when we have an extra set of ears that's tasked to be there. I mean, during our session, but also having ears out for other things and letting us know, because we know that a lot happens in Santa Fe during our 60 and 30-day sessions, but a lot of things happen outside the scope of those 60 to 30 days. And just having somebody who's, working with the lobbyists, not lobbyists, but the legislature, and working with the fourth floor helps us to keep the communication flowing. So we appreciate you. Thank you.
Madam Chair and Counselor, thank you.
Thank you. Anything? George? Counselor Perry, any comments?
No, ma'am, I'm fine. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Nebb's sort of peeking his nose in here, and could I ask you a question, please? I think there was sort of some question as to what maybe the specifics of this agreement would be, or what we were asking in the scope of work. Have you and Mr. Thompson been able to?
Yeah, we met today and we discussed some of the broader level portions of that. He's itching to get to work for us as well too. I would ask, and I think that's what we'll probably put out an email to the full council and try to consolidate all that effort so that we can direct accordingly, because the work begins now. And so what we'll do is we'll bring all the individual points together, and then we'll let everybody know exactly what we're going to focus on first and where we're headed from that point. So,
Okay.
and then he'll let us know when we all need to be involved as well too, because our work doesn't stop either.
Right. Appreciate that. Thank you. I do think you did send out an email asking any counselors that may have had some suggestions to be at this meeting, and I
Yeah,
don't know,
And- Yeah, yeah, and I don't think we had any responses to that. But I know that because we have the special session right after this as well too, it was a good time to have him come down.
Sure.
And that way we can at least introduce him. He can recognize everybody by face as well. So that was our goal.
Okay, I appreciate that. Counselor Best is the only other counselor I see in the audience. Did you want to speak on this item? Thank you, Mr. Neb.
I just wanted to welcome him to the team and say thank you, because we're not easy down here. As you can tell by the history that's going on at this time, we are individuals and our needs are really different than northern New Mexico. So I hope that you embrace our culture down here and us down here, and some of us you got to take with not just a grain of salt, but a whole cup of salt. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
I'll shake hands.
And Madam Chair and Counselor, I forgot to mention that my wife is from Roswell.
Oh,
So,
I didn't-
and so she was the eldest daughter of Jerome, Dr. Jerome and Nancy Dominic.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm
Oh,
married to
I didn't
Angelique.
ever know that.
So thank you.
That's interesting. Thank you. So, is there any other discussion on this agreement? Okay, so we appreciate you coming down today. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have you in Roswell, and we'll work out, I guess, details between you and the city manager. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay. Our next item is only for discussion. Mr. Morris has asked for 15 minutes. And we appreciate that. You want to, yeah, you will.
Afternoon. What we have here is a proposal that we would like to work on that will take significant energy and staff time to flesh out. So what we're doing is we have a proposal that we're going to present to all of the five council or the committees, council committees, just as a presentation before we take it to the city council to get a conceptual approval if we can do so. So that's what the genesis of this. It's already been presented once to public safety. We'll be obviously here tonight with legal. Infrastructure is on Monday, and then the other two will be early next month. Now, the affordable housing study that we did a couple of years ago has identified that this town needs a great deal of housing. It needs all kinds of housing. It needs multifamily, it needs single family, it needs affordable housing. And the question that we came up with was, are our current policies and practices and regulations that the city operates on, does it really deter this new construction of new housing within the city? Across the board, but especially within the residential sector. We've had a lot of commercial stuff going on, but we really would like to enhance the residential component, especially in the owner-occupied market. So what we're looking at is a process that will do the following. Provide incentives for the development community. Hopefully that will encourage new market rate housing starts. That's market rate. Also encourage development of new affordable housing, which is a missing component that we really, really need. Look to place vacant city-owned properties back into onto the tax rolls, actually being used, and because we do have a number of them, and we're getting more all the time. Increasing the number of housing units that would be using the water and sewer and trash services that obviously residential units have to have. And also, importantly, replacing residential homes lost to code enforcement abatement activities and provide for a renewed community development inside some of the city's declining neighborhoods. You go into a lot of places, and it's strange because you'll see streets and sidewalks and hydrants and stop signs and street signs and lights, no houses. And so these communities are hurting, and they need to replace those units to rebuild those communities. So we're also looking for ways to just generally streamline the land development process that we have already. And why do we need it? Well, the current process, we think, does discourage new development to an extent. These are some of the fees that you pay that are, when you come in for a new building permit. We've got building permit fees, mechanical fees, plumbing fees, parking lot fees if you're a commercial property to inspect, water, sewer, taps, water meters, and they all add up. They're all individual components. We also have something called a frontage fee. And the frontage fee was intended to pay back for the installation or the running of water and sewer lines a long time ago, throughout the system. And so when you build a house, you have a frontage fee to pay your set. Of course, this was done, these fees were generated decades ago. There's also a park fee, which goes along with that for the development of all our parks that we did a long time ago. And as you can see here, if you've got a $200,000 value on a house with 100 feet of frontage, you're paying more actually for your frontage and park fees than you are for the building permit, and that's just average. So we started thinking, are we really concentrating on the right stuff? And are we really just focusing in on the short-term monies that you collect for a new house up front, that $4,000? Or should we be looking at it differently, long-term? Looking at, a typical house should be able to get 60 years out of it, out of the lifespan. During that time, they're paying water, sewer, trash. They are paying property tax. They're paying GRT from the family that's moved into that place. And so if you look at it long-term, are we shooting ourselves in the foot by worrying about the short-term benefits versus the long-term extent? But probably the most important part is the value of a house, a new house, to stabilize a community. The idea is owner-occupied. I call them kind of the Bengal tigers of your neighborhood. They're the ones that will want to protect their house because they're paying the mortgage, it's their investment, their family. Renters are good, owner-occupied are better because they have a stake, they have skin in the game. And so that, I think, is very, very important because if you can't stabilize your neighborhoods, you got to hire more cops. You have more EMT calls, all the other the bad stuff that goes along with that. So for us, it's a consideration of short-term versus long-term, and we're siding kind of on the long-term. Okay, we do have some incentives currently in the code. The first one was done for Spring River, and this is kind of a sliding scale for multifamily. How many units are you bringing into the system? And so basically the more units you bring in, the bigger your reduction is in terms of the permit fees that you are required to pay. The second one is a density bonus, and the idea here is if you can figure out how to put 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag and make all of the land development standards fit, we would give you 50% by right additional units, especially in affordable units because your profit margin on an affordable structure is smaller than on a very expensive house. So how a builder makes it up is in density. That's how you get to it. So these two also work with each other, but what else can we do? We want to expand on that theory. So the first thing we want to do is consolidate all these fees that we have into a single number. One number. For whatever your situation is, make one number. And a single application, so you don't have to turn in different pieces of paper for different things at different times. Secondly, we want to maintain the density bonus and permit fee reductions that we already have in the code. We want to provide properties that we have in our inventory for construction at heavily discounted rates, which we're allowed to do, and especially for affordable residential housing units. That's the key that we think will help with that. And so this is what we're talking about. If your value is on the left-hand side is the standard market rate, single family residential, greater in value than $300,000, your fee is going to be $3,000 under our system right now. Market rate less than $300,000, now you're paying $2,000. Remember what you paid before? It was over $4,000 for a $200,000 home. The idea is that it's beneficial. Affordable housing, if you're proposing a house, think a habitat house, a good solid habitat house, $150,000, $160,000. We're saying $1,000 and we'll throw in a property. Again, get the house built. And if you already have a property, but you want to do an affordable housing unit, $750, and then a modular housing slab permit is $500. Again, one number, not a matrix of costs, one number, one application, one fit to try to encourage people to come in to pull permits for residential housing. Now, Todd Visiglio is going to take you through the process here of what we're talking about, how this would work.
Thank you for having me this afternoon. Appreciate it. So I've been working with Bill and with legal on how these properties come in. So my job essentially is is identifying existing properties that the city already has. We have a number of properties. If you look them up on the county site, there's over 300. But are those properties actual properties in the city limits, and are they usable? So we've been going through and creating a list of properties that the city already owns. Some of them are going to continue to come to us through the nuisance property program or the clean and safe program, so we'll have those that we'll be able to add into our inventory that I'll be tracking. So we obtain the properties for the program, I vet them, and catalog those properties. Then what I do is I develop a what we're just calling a quick one sheet. It's a fact sheet that any builder or contractor or investor can look at, identify where the property is at, the size of the lot, the legal description, if there are already city utilities on site or whether they exist or not, the actual value and the taxable value of the property. So I have a catalog of these properties so that when we go to roll out this program, we'll have these available. So after we obtain the properties from the program, I vet them, catalog them. I'll be working with Juanita Jennings and her department to market those properties, social media, and other ways that we're looking at to get the information out to the public so that everybody has a fair chance and opportunity to be able to invest into Roswell. We'll have a sale on a market rate properties based on property assessor value, clean and clear title purchase, non-market value rate properties, affordable period of 5 years, which Bill will talk about a little bit more here in just a second. We'll be able to explain the incentives for the property sales, consolidate fees, again, like Bill said, to a single fee, density bonus program that we have existing, a single building permit application, one form, one fee, and then any properties that come to us as well through property donation or affordable housing. Thank you.
Now, Todd talked about mentioned the affordability period. LEDA, through the affordable housing provisions and also our adopted affordable housing ordinance, allows for basically the donation of properties. But the other side of that, the requirement is that those properties cannot just be flipped automatically as becoming an investment property. And so the intent here is to encourage owner-occupied. As I said, that's the hierarchy. Owner-occupied first, rentals later. So here the idea is that an owner would actually live in that house for at least 5 years, and typically if they sell the house before the 5 years is up, any profits they made would come back to the city, or whatever the standards are that we would negotiate into the sales contract. So the idea is not to encourage just houses to be built, but again, to try to get families in those houses and have them live there and stabilize those communities. What do we need to do? Lots. Chapter 26, which is your water, sewer, and sewage chapter in the city code, would have to be pretty significant changes to show the consolidation of the fees and the elimination of the park and extension fees. Chapter 6, which is the buildings and building regulations, would again also have to consolidate all of the various fees that we have throughout that. We have to develop a policy that shows how you coordinate this thing through community development, one application now, as it moves through the system. And also, there has to be an understanding that this is going to significantly reduce revenues coming, not significantly, but I mean, it's going to have an impact on revenues coming in to the community development department in the short term. Again, short term versus long term. Big picture, long term. That's what we're shooting for. Now, this is the general schedule. I think it's, hopefully it's, actually made. General service is the only one that's getting pushed back. Finance will be there, and again, would take it to the August City Council for conceptual approval to move forward. Because like I said, this is going to be a significant amount of workload on staff. And what we'd like to do is get kind of an idea that we're in the ballpark, maybe a little to the left, a little to the right, but generally, instead of producing a lot of stuff and then finding out it's just not going to work. So that's why we're here tonight, and I'll stand for any questions. Oh, I'm sorry. There was further, we could look at creating an expansion into the commercial projects as well, but that's, right now, we're really kind of focusing on the residential. Stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Morris. I appreciate the work and the thought that you've put into this. Does the committee have any questions or comments for Mr. Morris? Yes, Mr.
I just,
I'm looking at Peterson Patterson, I'm sorry.
I think this is a great idea to help affordable housing here in Roswell. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Any other comments? Anyone?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, this basically concludes our agenda. We have our department reports from the city clerk, the legal and safety. Does the committee have any questions on those reports? Okay, hearing none and there being no further business on the agenda, the legal committee will adjourn at 4:41. Thank you all.